on the phone. Can you hear us okay?
I think they can hear you.
I think we have all current players at the table. Do we need to do a round of introductions?
I think it wouldn't hurt.
Okay.
That would be helpful.
Yes, sorry, Lisa. That is always helpful for folks on the phone. I'm Jean Marie Clark. I'm the board chair, and I'm from Bakersfield.
Christy Martin, Principal, Sheldon.
Lynn Coda, Superintendent, Franklin Northeast.
Leonard Bordeaux, Principal, Berkshire Elementary.
Sandy Alexander, Principal at Montgomery Elementary.
Anissa Seguin, Principal at Bakersfield.
Julia Callan, I'm the Sheldon Board Chair.
Leanne Trombley, I am Berkshire. Yep.
Which medium?
That's exactly it, yep.
Erin Paquette, Bakersfield.
Morgan Daybell, Business Manager.
Okay. Consent agenda, and we have no visitors this evening. Okay.
Can I just say,
Please.
Mary and Lisa, we also have another person in the room today. Can you remind me of your name?
Katie.
Katie from Northwest Access TV is here. She's going to be filming our board meetings as we move forward in this process.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thoughts about the consent agenda? There's a whole lot on there. Motions? Discussions?
You could break this into two parts if you wanted to.
Yeah.
If you want to take just your minutes for now, and then we have the policies. Did everybody get the policies?
Yeah.
So we could
All
take
of them,
the
yeah.
policies now, or we could table and come back to it if you wanted to. Is there other things that we might want to push ourselves through?
Okay.
Unless people are good with the policies.
Did everyone have an opportunity to read through the policies?
I don't think I got the copies from the meeting, our last meeting, I guess it would have been.
Of the first round
Sent
of
them all
policies?
different.
Yeah,
5.
I think just the one that I had a question on, and I don't know if you want to do this now or after we do the rest of the consent agenda, was just the E8 collection of delinquent meal charges. Because I think there were some differences between maybe what the schools in the district are doing now and what Sheldon currently has a practice of doing, so.
Okay. So we could, Jean Marie, what's your pleasure? Do we want to take a look at that specifically, or do we want to?
We could, any questions on any others? Do we want to make a motion to accept some excluding E8 and discuss the,
What we could do with E8 is we could send it back to policy with a copy of the Franklin Northwest policy, or
Okay.
specific to Sheldon's. And
Yeah.
then we can ask them to take a look at the two.
Yeah, and I
Compare.
think just the difference, I think, is just in how the food service is managed and maybe what Franklin Northeast policies are.
you have a service.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, and I
right.
think that all of your schools have
In-house.
Don't have a service.
it's an in-house, but there's also,
We also have some universal meal
yeah, I can't think
provisions.
of the term.
Provisions.
And so we don't have that, and so that the delinquent meal charges for Sheldon might look different, and so I
Okay.
just,
So why don't we just send that one back?
Yeah.
Those two separate motions, or
Yeah, make a motion. We could have Julia make a motion to push the E8, the collection of delinquent meal charges, back to the policy committee for review with a copy of the Franklin Northwest policy.
sure.
We're not seconding anything anymore, right? Anyone in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye. Erin?
sorry, aye.
Ladies on the phone?
I'm fine. Hi.
Thank you. Okay. Questions on any of the other policies? Okay, a motion about the remaining policies?
To accept them. I'll make that motion.
Okay. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ladies on the phone, there's a motion to move the remaining policies forward as is. Your votes?
I think I need to abstain because I've not been formally sworn in.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary.
First reading, I agree that
Okay,
didn't have.
thank you all.
Conversation we had about that. Right. I never had a conversation.
Do we want to go to previous minutes now, Lynn? Is that what you're suggesting?
You can do that.
So we have minutes from November 12th, and we have minutes from a lack of minutes from December 10th and January 14th. Questions or concerns about the minutes? Motion to approve the minutes?
I can make that motion.
Thank you, Erin. Your pleasure, ladies? Aye. Ladies on the phone?
Aye,
Thank you.
and I'll abstain.
Thank you. And I think that covers the consent agenda. Okay. Any other reorganization to our agenda for today? Ms. Coda?
No, I think that, I don't have anything to add. Nothing that I think we need to change in terms of order.
And we have no visitors. So Lynn, all
Okay,
you.
all me. I'm really, Lisa and Mary, do you have computers in front of you?
I have my phone.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm gonna send you something. I should have attended to this earlier.
You think you sent this out though?
I did not.
I didn't see this.
So, Morgan, can I pass this off to you? Use the Act 46 thing that's open, and it should be saved to the desktop. So I just want to go over, there's a lot of moving parts with Act 46, so I would like to just start right at the top with all of you. I know that your eyes are, inclined to keep moving through the document, but I want to make sure we take this and we're all building some common understandings and background information as we go through. So I try to just create a visual to represent who we are as a new Unified Union School District. So that's that orange circle there, the Northern Mountain Valley Unified Union School District.
Lynn, is this something you just emailed? I don't have it yet.
Morgan is working on emailing it to you right now.
Okay.
He's gonna do that in just a second.
Okay, yeah, I don't have it either. Thank
Okay.
you.
So Bakersfield, Berkshire, Montgomery, Sheldon, one Unified Union School District Board. That's where we are tonight. It's an 8-member board. So this is considered a hybrid merge, really, because we have the situation that's unique to most districts throughout the state that are impacted by this work on Act 46. So we have 2 towns, Bakersfield and Berkshire, who are represented on the left side, the yellow circle, as districts who voluntarily merged to work with one another. On the other side, districts that are forced to merge by the State Board of Ed order. So that includes both Sheldon and Montgomery. So for right now, the operational date for the districts who are voluntarily merging is July 1, 2019. For the districts who are forced to merge by the State Board order, the operational date is still July 1st, 2019, unless something happens in the legislature to change that. So right now, all 4 schools will be merging on July 1, 2019, all 4 school district boards, not schools. So there are several factors that have played into this work. The first is the court proceedings. So we know that there's a lawsuit that some of our towns are involved in Franklin Northeast, and Sheldon is involved as well in the group lawsuit. So there was an ask of Judge Mello to grant an injunction to stop mergers from happening. The grounds were that it was about questioning whether or not the forced merger work was constitutional. So Judge Mello ruled he did not grant the injunction to the plaintiffs in the case. Therefore, there's no barrier in the court proceedings from merging on July 1st, 2019. He does still have to hear the merits of the case, and he has to make a ruling on the case in general. He has given an indication that he will rule by June 30th, 2019, because he understands, the timeline everyone is under. It seems likely from conversations with people on both sides that this is likely going to end up in the Vermont Supreme Court no matter how he rules. So we're going to set the court part aside because there's nothing happening on the court side that's going to impact whether or not all 4 of these districts merge on July 1, 19. There are things, however, in the legislature that could change that operational date. So the House introduced a bill, H 39. The House version of that bill would delay the operational date for both the Montgomery Town School District and the Sheldon School District to become operational until July 1, 2020. So that bill, H 39, passed out of the House. It went over to the Senate Ed Committee. There was an amendment that was introduced in the Senate Ed Committee by Senator Baruth. A lot of people are calling this the Baruth Amendment. Right now, currently, the Baruth Amendment has passed through both the Senate Ed Committee and through the Appropriations Committee, and it is on the calendar for tomorrow to be heard by the full Senate. So this is going to be considered a second reading in the Senate, and Senator Baruth added some additional language to the amendment that I didn't note that anything was really substantial, his second amendment to the amendment. So there could be a decision on that in the next day or two. So in this amendment, in the Senate amendment, Montgomery would retain their small schools grant in the form of a merger support grant in perpetuity or until repealed if they become operational on July 1, 2019. Currently, Montgomery has met the eligibility criteria for the competitive small schools grant, but Montgomery will need to apply for that annually. At this time, there's no provision anywhere in the legislature for Bakersfield, a voluntarily merging school, not part of the SBE final order, to retain their small schools grant. So I have made a request to Senator Baruth to consider adding the language existing district into the language in his amendment in order to open up a path for Bakersfield to retain their small schools grant. So they've opened an avenue for people who have been forced, districts who have been forced, but there's been no avenue open for Bakersfield. And we believe this may be a unique situation for Bakersfield around the state. So I think it's pretty unique to us.
Would we be the only school to lose ours?
Well, I think
There's one other this year, and then as the criteria get tweaked, I imagine there'll be more years to go.
in this circumstance, though, we
Right.
believe we
What
might
was
be
Morgan's
unique.
answer? I'm sorry.
I think there are two existing recipients of the small schools grant that are not merged and will not get it next year. But those criteria could be tweaked every year, and they're measuring, different outcomes, so other schools could fall off that list in years to come.
Okay, so it has nothing to do with being in the same circumstance as Bakersfield in terms of being in a voluntary merger.
Well,
Right.
what he's talking about with the competitive, losing the automatic small schools grant. What I'm saying is if they change the language to existing district in that amendment, that might make it unique to Bakersfield.
Okay.
So,
Lynn, can you clarify this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, the fourth paragraph down on this thing. In this amendment, Montgomery retains their small school grants in the form of a merger support grant in perpetuity or until repealed if they become operational on 7/1/19.
correct.
But what about this possibility of a delay till 2020? How is that going to impact the Montgomery Small Schools Grant?
Then Montgomery would have to continue to meet the eligibility criteria for the competitive small schools grant. They'd have to apply on an annual basis.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, if the amendment that the Senate is going to be considering tomorrow is passed in the Senate, it will go back to the House. So when it returns to the House, if the House agrees with it, it will go to the governor for approval. If the House disagrees with the H39 Senate amendment, it'll end up in conference committee. So if if the bill lands in conference committee, then it'll be up to a small group of committee members to see if there's some place where they can compromise and come to some agreement somewhere likely between the House bill and the Senate bill. So if the conference committee comes to an agreement with one another and they move it along to the governor's desk, it's at that place, it'll be when he can sign that into law. If there's no agreement in conference committee, I believe at that point the bill would die in conference committee. So any questions about either the court proceedings or the legislative action part of this conversation? So I think there's a little bit of confusion around Sheldon. There's lots of big questions that I keep getting about, is Sheldon coming? Are they not coming? If there's a delay, do they stay in Franklin Northwest? Do they not stay in Franklin Northwest? So I want to provide some clarity around that. And I actually have something that I'm going to give you, Julia, and Christy, I can give you one as well. So the SU boundary adjustment was not done as part of the final statewide plan. So that's not part of the order. That was actually decided on by the State Board of Education on October 29th at their SBE meeting. So they made the decision to move Sheldon from Franklin Northwest to Franklin Northeast. So there's nothing being considered in the courts, and there's nothing being considered in the legislature that would delay that move of that SU boundary until 2020. There's nothing that I can foresee that is going to cause that delay for Sheldon to come to Franklin Northeast. So that may mean that they come as a district that is merged with the Northern Mountain Valley UUSD, or it may mean, if there's a delay for Sheldon, that they come to Franklin Northeast but as a single district. So I made a copy for each of you. Those are the minutes of the October 29th plan, and page 15 at the very top is where the note is about moving Sheldon's SU boundary, just to provide some clarity on that. Okay, so the back page, this is where I've tried to unpack the amendment that the Senate Ed Committee agreed to, the Baruth amendment, and I'm going to send this around. I don't want you to get lost in it though, so I'm going to send it to you to look at later, but this is the full Baruth amendment.
Lynn, are we the only district that is this hybrid? Are there others that are hybrid?
I don't know of another that's exactly like us. I think there are some. There may be one other, Jean Marie, but we're pretty unique.
Okay, I assume.
So I've gone through the Baruth amendment pretty carefully. So has Morgan, and just want to point out a couple of things. So if you look at the bottom, these are numbered in the hundreds. So page 758. There's a definitions page. So I just want to go through, and I want to say these things so we make sure we're all using the same language. We're going to build some common language here. So as this relates to Franklin Northeast, Supervisory Union, and Sheldon, I've tried to interpret this language. So when they're talking about existing district, they're talking about a union school district created by a vote of the electorate. That means the NMV, UUSD, Bakersfield, and Berkshire members. That's an existing district. I've got a little cheat sheet on your copy too on the side. So a forming district, school districts ordered by the SBE to merge with other forming districts. So for Franklin Northeast, for us, that means the Enosburg Town School District and the Richford Town School Districts. Those are forming districts. So the term initial members is in reference to the members of a board of a newly formed district. This applies only to the Enosburg Richford UUSD. They're the elected members to that board. The term merging district, school district ordered by the SBE to merge into an existing district. That term applies to the Montgomery School District and to the Sheldon School District. And newly formed district are the union school districts formed by the state board order by merging forming districts. So that's Enosburg, Richford, UUSD for us. So as I unpacked this and went through the Baruth Amendment, there were several things I noticed in looking through it. And the notes are here. So I've asked some clarifying questions because that's what I do. I need to be able to understand it in order to be able to help you guys navigate through this process. Because when I think about, we're kind of in a place right now where we know we have to move forward, but the best analogy I can come up with is it's kind of like when you do the dishes and you've got the stopper in the bottom of the sink, it holds all the water there, and then when you pull the stopper, everything just kind of goes quickly down the, well, that's a terrible analogy now that I just said that out loud. Not down the drain, but it just swiftly moves the water. Terrible analogy. But what's going to happen is once these decisions are made, things are going to start moving really quickly. That's the point of what I'm trying to say. So we need to really fully understand what this means for us so that we're prepared. And what that means is we have to be prepared for if this is the decision, this is the way we're going to go. If this is the decision, this is our path forward. So although it feels like this is a lot to understand, we have to be in a place where we understand it in order to be able to move us forward. So as I unpacked this, there were several things that I really need clarification on. So I have reached out. I've reached out to the agency. I've reached out to the VSA, the VSBA. I've reached out to our legal counsel. I've also reached out to Senator Baruth to try to understand what this means if this amendment is passed. So just clarifying, where it says clarification needed, I'm really looking at A and the second one, mergers of merging districts. So Montgomery and Sheldon be merging into an existing district, the NMVUSD. The school board of the existing district, the NMVUSD, currently is 8 members, 2 from each of the 4 communities. So this was a piece that I originally thought it said something different. I thought that the decision to merge or not merge was going to lie in the hands of the Sheldon board and the Montgomery board. But when you unpack that, the decision for whether or not Sheldon and Montgomery will delay or not delay if this amendment is approved actually lies at this board level. So the question is, I've gotten differing guidance on this. When they're referring to existing district, are they talking about before Sheldon and Montgomery joined? Existing was Bakersfield and Berkshire. So we have some questions lingering out there about, is it the 8 of you that'll be making the decision, or is it the Bakersfield and Berkshire board members who are going to be making that decision? So we have those questions out there. So it's important that everybody's here for this work, because as somebody pulls that plug, right, we have to be ready to move. So I'm waiting to hear back on that. I asked the clarifying question about Bakersfield and Berkshire. There really is no question about you all. We're going to be merging on July 1/19, Bakersfield and Berkshire into the NMV USD. One of the things that I asked of Senator Baruth was to consider amending his amendment to include a carve-out for Bakersfield under that small schools grant provision. Lisa, I will be forwarding that if it ends up in conference committee to legislators as well. considering adding language existing district. If they just added that language existing district, there'd be a carve out that would support Bakersfield. I feel strongly that without including that provision in their law, there's an underlying message that they're sending, that there's a financial penalty to the communities who voted favorably to merge, and I don't think that's the message that they're trying or should be trying to send. So I'm hoping that maybe they'll consider that. There's also language in Section 1, Number 4 of the Senate Ed Amendment around Union School District budgets. So when we really looked at that one and unpacked that one, we've been talking about this at our local board meetings for a while, trying to figure out if we are unable to get an approved budget before July 1, what's the avenue forward for a budget, a merged budget. So there is language in that Senate Ed Amendment about taking your last approved budget. So if it's, let's just play out this scenario. If all 4 of you were merging and we're going to be operational July 1, 19, it would be taking the most recent approved budget from all 4 of those towns, adding it together, and then increasing it by the average percentage increase in state education spending from last year. Okay? So it's a vehicle to get a budget. But when I really looked at that, I think there's something missing. So it says that if the budget of a newly formed district, and remember that for us is defined as Enosburg, Richford, UUSD, has not been approved, and then it goes on to say exactly what I just said to you. What is missing is existing district. So if they don't add that language, existing district, in there, I'm worried that it's going to be a little loophole for us in how we go about getting an approved budget if we don't have one, or getting an operational budget if we don't have an approved budget by July 1st. So I'm hoping the legislators will consider adding that language just to be certain that we're taken care of as well. There's still some other questions I have about the merge, and Morgan and I were talking earlier just about how many potential paths. We have to responsibly prepare you for whatever path it is that we're going to head down, and we kind of envision there could be 6 potential paths depending on the decisions that are happening for each of our communities and what configuration of merge we have ahead of us. So some of these questions have to do with figuring that all out. So for the NMV side, it's really deciding what's the size of the deliberative assembly, and that would be like your board. In the event that some of the towns merge for FY20 and some towns don't merge for FY20, does that mean it's an 8-member deliberative assembly, or is it 4? Or is there something in between? So there are questions about, would we have a board that would be comprised of some members that have students and schools in the UUSD for next year and some that don't for next year? And there are also questions that I don't see attended to in this law about, will community members in Sheldon and or Montgomery be required to vote on a budget covering schools where they could potentially have no students and no tax liability for FY20? That's like having representation without taxation. That doesn't really make sense. So we want to make sure they attend to that in the law as well. So there's still more information that we have. I wish I could come here and say, hey, we've got this figured out. We've got all the answers to this, but there are more questions that just need to be answered for us. So we will keep working to understand any changes that come out. We're working really hard to unpack it and navigate what does this mean to both sides of our merging districts for Franklin Northeast. So I don't want to panic any of you because you don't have to worry too long about this yet, but know that we will do it on your behalf at our office as we get closer to merge. So any questions on that piece of the update?
You sent this off to Bruce?
Yes.
Did you hear back from him at all?
I heard right as our board meeting was starting that there was a question coming out of legislative council to other council about this. So I know that somebody's at least paying attention to it. I don't know that there's any action coming, but my goal was just to let them know that not to say merge, don't merge, delay, don't delay. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is we're tasked with responsibly moving forward, and there's missing information that we need, and maybe it's there and we just haven't interpreted it yet, but we need help being ready. So that's the whole point of trying to move in that direction. Does that make
Brent,
sense?
have you heard anything at all from the Agency of Education?
I have, Lisa. I got some guidance late last week, and I got more guidance today, trying to navigate some of these questions, which is typical of the complexity of this, is if when you get one question answered, depending on how it's answered, sometimes it generates two more questions. So
Right.
we're still in the midst of going back and forth, trying to unpack what this is. And, I mean, we'll keep trying to understand, but again, we don't know that any of this is going to actually happen this way. But this is the way we understand it for now. And if there's something different that comes out of the House or Conference Committee, I will keep you informed of that.
Thank you.
I think for Sheldon, our advocacy, because we sent written testimony to the Senate, was that we were looking for a delay because of the enormity of a transition like this for just Sheldon and moving supervisory unions. And so we would be looking, if we were moving forward with a delay, simultaneously advocating for not moving supervisory unions, because that's the big, for us, that's the big hang up right now, is trying to do this in such a consolidated time frame, and really looking to have that full year to migrate everything.
So two questions. One is, what are you envisioning to be the biggest work in that process? Or the biggest barrier to being able to do it in this timeline?
I don't know if there's, I mean, maybe there's one that sticks out for you. The ones that pop into my head are the technology and just all the different pieces of that. And then embedded within that would be moving special education and support services, and what that will take. And that sort of goes with the technology piece of trying to pull everything from MBU's server and bringing it over to Franklin Northeast. I think, and it looks like we're going to talk about it a little bit more tonight, but our supervisor union staff, it looks like there might be some agreement on that piece. So that's not as concerning anymore. But just making sure that we can have a concrete plan around how we're going to do those things. And a lot of it has to happen over the summer. And so what the cost is going to be for that.
So one of the things
Insurance, I think, was a big
yep.
question.
the HRA piece.
Just insurance in general. I think there was some, that was information that we got that no one is really sure how that will happen mid-year.
So I want to just say that we're working on all those finer details at our office as well. We actually just met today with the tech coordinator to talk through what that would look like, because we have to be ready for you to come. So we're simultaneously doing this work of saying, here are all the things that we need to do to move Sheldon over. And while at the same time, he's working with the Franklin Northwest technology coordinator to make sure that, not that we're going to have every single detail figured out. I'm sure there'll be some bumps on the way, but it's not just sitting on a shelf for the what if. I mean, we're readying for it, because there's nothing that says you're not coming to our supervisory union. So if you're advocating for that, you know that that's at the state board level, right?
Right.
'Cause-
Yeah.
So that's where that ask needs to come from. And, yeah.
Well, and I think if there are plans that are happening, like at either supervisory union, it might be good if you're able to come to a meeting, just for Sheldon specifically, so that
I would love
we can
to.
hash all that out,
Yeah.
just so that we all know sort of what's going on behind the scenes, because what we're advocating might not be necessary in that case. So.
I spoke with Julie Reginbold earlier today, and I said that to her.
Okay.
I kind of threw that olive branch out in the fall, and I know that there has been some contentious debate, especially around the lawsuit and whether or not this would be delayed because of the suit. So I haven't said it again, but I've been waiting for you guys to say, can you come to us? I'm willing and able to come whenever you're ready.
Yeah.
So just let me know when that next meeting
Okay.
is or when you would like me to come talk about those things.
Yeah.
Be happy to. Any other questions on that before I move on? Okay, so now I'm going to talk about, Julia gave me a good segue. And well, actually, Christy, one of you, both of you, I'm not sure. So we, in anticipation of Sheldon coming to Franklin Northeast, we have been negotiating with the teachers union. Sheldon has had a negotiator on that committee, and you know, it was a pretty big work. We took the Sheldon master agreement and we put it side by side with the Franklin Northeast master agreement, and we tried to take a look at, you know, whether Sheldon is coming this year. Let me just back up for a second. Sheldon has ratified a master agreement in Franklin Northwest. So their teachers will be asked to take a look at the Franklin Northeast contract to consider for ratification, and they'll be able to decide whether they're coming with the Franklin Northwest agreement or the Franklin Northeast agreement. So we knew that the work we were doing could have been for Sheldon this year or Sheldon next year, so we knew it was important to attend to the alignment of language, whether it was this year or next. So this, both sides have tentatively agreed. The teachers union is going around to schools and they're gonna be working to ratify with the local teachers unions. Morgan and I are bringing this to each of our boards, and we're asking the board, so at the end of this conversation, I'm gonna ask you to grant Jean Marie authority to sign and ratify this master agreement away from the table on your behalf. So I'm gonna go over information from the master agreement. I'm going to give you a summary. Know that I'm not touching every detail because we really did take this from start to finish, and we worked hard to align our language between the two systems, and I think we did it in 3 negotiation meetings with several in-between meetings that seemed to really work well. I think the process was we were really goal-oriented. One, the goal of merging and making this as smooth a transition as we could for Sheldon. And the other big goal of this work around the master agreement was attending to the issues that we have been having in Franklin Northeast for a while, and that's attracting and retaining high-quality teachers. So we had been looking at, is that us? Oh. So we've been looking at our data for the last year and a half, and we've been looking at, you know, what percentage of teachers are leaving our supervisory union. We've been looking at it at the school level, and we did a survey last year to try to unpack the why. Why are people choosing to leave Franklin Northeast? We also did a look at not just the why, but the when are they leaving, and it was really clear in our data that we're losing teachers in years 1 through 4 of their employment, and generally, if they get to year 4, they generally tend to stay. So we really had a common goal between the teachers union and the board negotiation council to try to work towards that common goal. So I'm going to just go through some of the highlights. So we made sure, because there's a concern in Sheldon about reassignments and transfers, so we made sure that we came up with some language that makes that really clear how that's going to work for us. So we agreed upon language there. There were a lot of the pieces were little details just around dates and notifications and salary schedules and things like that, but I think we worked through most of that. We negotiated 1 additional day from the teachers, so we'll have an additional teacher in-service day next year, 186, which puts us in line with what Sheldon currently has. Created some clarity around workday language that I think was important. The preparation time, we did not get to the place where it's exactly the same as Sheldon. We kept it where we felt our schools had the capacity to be without hiring new staff to cover those preparation periods. In terms of salary, I'm gonna have Morgan to describe the salary in just a minute. We put some language in about how we place new teachers on our salary schedule, and we made that clearer. So they were going on the salary schedule based on years of experience, which actually created a little bit of inequity with our existing teachers because their steps don't necessarily reflect years of experience because they've come off the schedule and gone back on a few times. So we've created some language to support that. We created, so we introduced the idea of having a longevity bonus. So for any teachers that are right now in years 1 through 4, they'll be eligible for this longevity bonus. Anybody who currently is in year 5 or beyond, they'll retain whatever existing retirement benefit we already had in the master agreement. But for the longevity bonus, for every 5 years of continuous employment in our supervisory union, we will give them a check for $600 to recognize their willingness to stay with us. So this is in lieu of the retirement bonus. So over the years, our retirement benefit will phase out and the longevity bonus will replace it.
What was the retirement benefit?
The retirement benefit was if teachers taught 15 consecutive years when they left, they got $125 per year of service, but they had to get to 15 years before they got that benefit. So this gives them more regular recognition for staying. So we ended up landing for health insurance. We landed with the 80-20, and we kept the HSA at their current level. Is there anything else I need to say about that? The difference there is that there are some teachers in Sheldon who currently, you all can choose HSA or HRA, right?
Do you choose?
So that would be a change if they chose to ratify this. Everybody would shift to the HSA. And Morgan would waive his one and make that all happen with his staff downstairs and working with Laura at Franklin Northwest. So we did increase the cash in lieu of insurance by around $500, and we made some changes around teachers' use of their tuition money. So all teachers have up to 3 credits, the UVM rate, that they can access for tuition reimbursement. So within their first 5 years of employment, there's new language now that they can access half of whatever is remaining. So if they took one course and it was $1,000 and they have $1,000 remaining, they can make a request to put $500 of that towards their student loan debt. So we think that's something unique to us that might attract people to our supervisory union. We still want them to take courses, but in the first 5 years, we are recognizing that it's important that we want them to come and stay. We made a shift, our sick leave bank. We were dealing with a lot of requests that didn't meet the criteria for the sick leave bank. So we replaced it with sick day transfer language. So that's where we're at with that. And then Morgan, could you talk through, oh wait, there's one other piece. We did talk about seniority being based upon years of service within the supervisory union, not the district, and taking Sheldon's people and giving them credit for all their years of service in Franklin Northwest so they don't lose any of that seniority that they had. So we would bring everybody on that way. Can you talk through the salary grid idea?
Sure. So our current salary grid has a base of $37,450, and it's a dollar step. So as long as you're on the grid each year, that the board gives steps, teacher will get an additional $13.50. What we did for returning Franklin Northeast teachers because we gave them all a step, so they all got that $1,350. And then we took the top two steps, steps 1 and 2, off of the grid. If you were on step 1 this year, and we give you the steps, you were step 2, when we take your step away, you would then move down to that step 3. And then we said step 3 is going to be the new step 1. So what it does is it guarantees every returning teacher on step a $1,350 increase. If you're in your first year teaching, this year only, you would get a $2,700 increase because we're getting rid of those steps. And that for Franklin Northeast teachers is costing about 3% in new money. But our base is now going from $37,450 to $40,150. So it's costing you 3% in new money, but your base is going up about 7%. So it's going to make us a lot more competitive in terms of hiring teachers going forward.
This is actually the first time in my memory bank, which is like 24 years in Franklin Northeast now, that we haven't been the lowest paid supervisory union in Franklin County. So
Yeah, it's kind of exciting. I mean, I know a lot of this came to play because we brought Sheldon on board, but like it's all the boats are rising. It makes it so much more appealing. I think that's great.
we tried to do it in a really strategic way so that it didn't blow it out so far on the other end that it made it unaffordable for taxpayers.
Right.
So really, you know, the goal with the new money piece, we were able to accomplish a pretty big base increase. And because of that flat dollar increase instead of the percentage index, it was much more affordable than any other way that we could have done it. So any questions about the master agreement that I just described? Anything that I didn't address that you had questions about? So I would ask for a motion then to grant Jean Marie the authority to sign and ratify this master agreement away from the table.
I can make that motion.
Those in favor?
For those on the phone, Aaron made the motion, and Jean Marie's looking for a favor.
I'm only getting about half of what you're
That
saying.
pump is
Yeah.
noisy.
Sorry.
So
I have a question. I'm not sure if the connection is working or not. Yeah, I'm not sure either.
we can hear you.
Okay, so I have a question, Lynn. Can you please clarify for me if we are authorizing someone to ratify the master agreement? This is the ratification of the master agreement on behalf of all 4 schools, correct?
On behalf of the Northern Mountain Valley Unified Union School District, this same master agreement has been brought to every local town. If it hasn't been in Montgomery yet, it will be. Wasn't
Been
it?
in
I see.
Montgomery and Enosburg.
It's already been in Montgomery and it went to Enosburg, Mary. So you made the same motion already in Montgomery?
Right. So I just clarifying, so the motion tonight isn't specific, is Montgomery part of it? Is it kind of a double inclusion, or this stands separate and alone from what we did at our last board meeting with the ratification?
So, Mary, it shouldn't, I'm gonna try to answer this as succinctly as possible. The first paragraph in the master agreement and the signature page on the master agreement were really challenging. And you wouldn't think that that would be so. It's because we don't yet know all of the, like, what districts will this include next year. So we have included all of them just to cover. So we'll have someone signing from, you'll be signing, Mary, for the Montgomery Town School District. Jean Marie will be signing for Northern Mountain Valley. We'll have Tennyson sign for, no, not Bakersfield. The only 2 that are not on this list are Bakersfield and Berkshire because we know that they won't be operating districts next year. So this is this board's responsibility to sign for NMVU USD, but Montgomery is on there as a single district as well, just as a contingency.
Okay, thank you.
We did joke about that a little, that shouldn't be the toughest part of negotiation, but it really was challenging, like, how to identify those districts, right?
Lisa and Mary, your pleasure on the motion?
Aye.
So Mary's
I
not been sworn in
still think I
yet.
have to kind of,
Oh,
Yeah.
I keep
I
asking.
have to abstain, I believe.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Thank
Mary,
you,
I
Mary.
keep asking you and you keep reminding
So
me.
I, so I
Sorry.
appreciate the inclusion, and, you know, if I could, I would vote, but I think I have to abstain until I'm formally sworn in.
So the last part I want to talk about, just on the ratification part, is I'm asking boards to give me their kind of their sentiment about teacher contracts. So we're coming up on a place in time where we have to make decisions. Generally, what happens when we're here is we have approved budgets because of where this falls in the calendar. We're in a very different situation without an approved budget right now. So we generally, at this time of the year, have to decide if there are any reductions in force. Are there any positions that we're going to be eliminating in our schools moving forward? So we're in a place now where I want to be able to offer contracts to our teachers on time. We just did all of this great work to try to make it more appealing for people to want to come and stay with us, because that is the single greatest impact on student learning, is having a really good teacher in the classroom. So it's important for our students that we have locked in our teachers. So I'm asking boards to give me guidance on how comfortable you feel with me offering contracts like we would typically offer contracts, which could be before the legislature rules. We don't know how quickly this is going to get wrapped up in legislature. If the legislature rules, we think we are going to have the budget that we would need to cover those expenses. The ask is really about you generally know your revenue before you commit to your expenditures. And we're in a situation right now where I'm saying to you, please consider allowing me to commit the expenditures before we know with absolute certainty what the revenue is, because the cost of not doing that has a direct and substantial impact on students. So I'd like you as board members to have that conversation.
I said it last week, I'm gonna say it again, not on camera, but speaking as a teacher who went through this merging work and one who had been riffed because of the uncertainty of what was going to happen, and also watching the climate of the building just turn upside down, and then losing staff members because of it, just because the uncertainty. I don't want that to happen for our schools. I don't want that to happen for our teachers. I don't want that to happen for our students or our community. I'm really nervous about the fact that we may have teachers who are already looking because they're so nervous about the uncertainty of budgets, of what's going on with this merge, all the other stuff that's happening in the public. So I don't want to see rifts because of Act 46. Any other reasons why? Like, that's a whole nother discussion, but because we're uncertain about a budget right now, because of where legislation is, I don't want to have that happen in our schools.
One thing we know for certain is that there are going to be 4 schools that open up with about the same number of kids coming to our doors on August 28th or whatever date next year. So we have some knowns there. It's the scary unknown part about the revenue. We're going to need to be operational. We're going to need to be ready for them. What do others think?
I think you need to move forward.
What do you think from your standpoint, Julia?
Yeah, I would agree. Do we have any indication on revenue?
Well, no. Because we either need to, we don't know how to warn a budget yet.
Right.
Because we need to know, we're gonna talk this through. You know, if we were gonna say, let's have a contingency plan for this district, it would be a 2-town, Bakersfield, Berkshire. And it potentially could be a 3-town, Bakersfield, Berkshire, Sheldon, or another 3-town, Bakersfield, Berkshire, Montgomery, or a 4-town. So there's just not certainty about how that budget will be warned until the legislative action is determined. Then we'll know, we're ready in terms of what we've done for expenditure work, and you guys have already worked with Laura to know yours, as well. So as soon as we know that, we can warn the budget, but we won't really know until we vote on the budget. We know what the state is anticipating in terms of revenue, and they're giving us that data for all 4 towns combined. And we have a pretty good sense of your anticipated expenditures. But it's just not having that voter-approved budget or the kind of security blanket of knowing that that language has been passed in the legislature.
So, to add to that, the RIF or the Franklin Northeast Master Agreement would need to go out by April 15th. You will not have a voter-approved budget before May 15th at the earliest. So
I'm sorry, Morgan, I can't hear you at all.
So the RIF letters need to go out by April 15th per the master agreement. We would not have a budget voted on until May 14th at the earliest, and I'll be going over schedules later on in the meeting. So the issue is more about an approved budget. You know, if we had gone forward at town meeting day with a budget that could cover 100 teachers and it passed, we would know that we could issue contracts to 100 teachers confidently. If we don't know until May whether that budget's going to pass, the conversations at that time are going to be, okay, what can we get passed if the first round doesn't go through? And we're going to need to either own our teachers by then or own no teachers by then.
Anybody else want to weigh in?
I am concerned about, I'm not as concerned about losing teachers. I think that, I can really only speak sort of wholeheartedly about this school building, but I think they're all fairly happy in their positions, and I don't think they want to leave, but I think that the longer we delay this, the more uncertainty we're offering them and more fuel to the fire for them to look for other positions. So I actually have more concerns of voter turnout for a budget in May more than anything. I just wonder what the townspeople are, what the turnout will be like, what their questions will be, because potentially it's going to be completely different looking than anything they've seen in the last 100 years. So we have to move forward. It might be an animal to fight just to get it to pass. So let's not delay. Let's not, dilly-dally any longer than potentially we are going to get slowed down in the round. So.
All right, I wanted to make sure that board members were having the opportunity to weigh in. I don't need you to make a motion or anything. I just wanted to make sure, I commit to offering all these contracts. I want to make sure you're not going to then come back and say, hey.
We were just kidding.
Yeah. So I wanted you to consider that.
Will we do traditionally in this town, we do the night before the town meeting, we do a finance meeting to discuss the school budget. Will we do some routine of that once we get to that point?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. I think you'll have a formal meeting, and then I think what our original plan was is that we would likely still meet at each of the individual towns as well. So we might need to modify some board meeting schedules that month to make that happen. So, Jean Marie, this is for you, just a reminder about the Lake Maury Chair Superintendent Training.
So you're twisting my arm.
Not that I'm trying to tell you a second time, but it was in all of my notes for this month. I have nothing under personnel because you don't actually have any yet. Just in terms of upcoming board work, we've kind of laid the foundation for you about what's ahead of us. We really have to. We have a board election and a budget that we're going to have to be thinking forward to as soon as we know what our process and who our districts are going to be. So that's what our eye will be really focused on. And in terms of there's board work and then there's internal work. And, you know, we are developing a work plan. We've been, you know, looking at the work plans of other merged districts who have already done that work. We met with Christy and Julie and Laura early on in the fall to try to get a sense of what they were envisioning that maybe we hadn't. So that's all included in that work plan. So there's a lot of stuff that's happening behind the scenes to ready us just as soon as we know we're like at the starting line. And as soon as they sound the alarm, we're gonna be ready to go. And negotiations committee is the last thing on my agenda. Lisa is unable to be on the negotiations committee for the rest of this term because she's quite a busy lady these days. So there's a vacancy for the negotiations committee. So I talked to you about the master agreement for the teacher's contract. So we are currently negotiating with the support staff. We met last Wednesday. We'll meet again next Wednesday, and then 2 Wednesdays after that. We have 3 meetings scheduled to try to come to a consensus on support staff negotiations. So we believe for Sheldon, your support staff had a 2-year contract or 2-year agreement, and next year will be their 2nd year. So we will do the work of trying to align language and merge them next time we negotiate, which will start up again next fall because these are all 1-year deals. So looking to see if there's anyone else who would be willing to be on the negotiations committee for NMV, representing NMV. So I know it would, Leanne is already there, she's already on, and Lisa was representing NMV. So is anyone else interested? It would be great if we could get someone on the council, but even if you can't come to the next 2 scheduled meetings, it would be okay. We could give you a call and catch you up. Any interest?
Can you remind us when those meetings?
They're Wednesdays. The council meets at 5, and then we meet with the support staff at 6, and generally it's 2 hours. So we're anticipating next Wednesday, and then 2 weeks from then.
In Edinburgh.
Yeah. Or really, maybe we'll be done next Wednesday. Right, Leanne?
2 meetings, right?
We'll see.
I'm going for 2
We've done quite a
meetings.
lot of work already,
Yeah.
so it's possible. We'll see.
Fingers crossed. And I shouldn't come to the next one because that's when you finish the last, right? So I'm the good luck charm.
Right. Any interest?
We need 2 representatives.
You
Really
need
should
2
have.
representatives, but we never have everyone at the table is what I'm trying to say to you.
Right.
So even if you appoint someone and you can't make it to this next one, it's okay. We can still send the information to you and you can give us your feedback.
Are you looking for nominations? Was this a nomination thing?
You could do it however you want to.
That feels dangerous.
I see we're missing one person from our, what's not, no, I'm just kidding.
She's on it.
No, I was talking about Sean.
Oh, funny.
Oh.
Gotcha.
Well, I will say it doesn't make sense to have it be Sean or Julia because it's not them yet. Although we'd love to have it.
I just get nervous because I know it's support staff, but because my husband works in the district, I just would like to stay away from them.
So we have,
Negotiation.
not to try to persuade you, but we do have a similar situation in another town where we have one person that has a family member on the teacher side and another person that has a family member on the support side. So they switch sides and they only negotiate the one that they don't have the connection with. So it would be okay for you to there'd be no conflict for you on the support staff side because it really has nothing to do with the teacher's agreement at all. I did think you were gonna nominate someone
I was gonna,
else, but
I can nominate Jean Marie.
I was gonna hide my head under the table when she asked if she could nominate someone.
I thought that's where she was going.
I nominate Jean Marie Clark for the negotiations committee.
What's on your calendar for next Wednesday? Do you look free?
No, I have IP meeting the following Wednesday. So busy.
I will take the nomination. I'm not really sure what's on my calendar for next Wednesday.
Right, thank you very much. And I am done.
Someone's gonna have to remind me when I go to this, because I feel like I get a lot of invitations to meetings and that only 50% of them I'm supposed to go to.
So when you hear me in the next month say negotiation
Where the hell were
council,
you, Jean Marie?
that's you.
Okay. Yes, all those in favor of me being on the committee?
Aye.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Jean Marie.
Okay, are we done with you, Lynn?
Done with
We
me.
are, phew.
You're done with me.
Okay. I think that's you, Morgan. I've lost my agenda here. Yes.
So I have progress update on there. We are trying to move forward with getting this district set up as much as possible, not really knowing who the final players will be for this year. But we are doing work on that. I will have 3 sets of motions that I'll want you to consider at the end of my section. I've also got discussion on the budget and annual meeting, and this is still, in my mind, up in the air, but I wanted to tip you to the likely schedule. As a unified district, you need to have a 30 to 40 day warning period for a budget. You are also electing board seats at your next meeting. That has a different warning period. It's got a different period because you need to give people 6 Mondays prior to the vote to get their petitions in. I certainly am not ready to have you guys warn the budget at this meeting. If you were to warn in your annual meeting at your April 8th.
I'm sorry, Morgan, could you speak up just a little bit, please?
Sure.
It's gonna move for you, Lisa.
Okay, great.
If you were going to warn your annual meeting at your April 8th meeting, which is your next scheduled board meeting, the earliest you could have a budget vote is May 14th. The earliest Tuesday you could have a budget vote is May 14th. If you had the budget meeting that night and you did your board seats that night, it would mean the board petitions were due also on April 8th, which is the same day you just warned your budget. If you had your meeting on April 8th and you warned a May 21st budget vote and board seat vote, it would give you an extra week to get your board petitions in. And the reason that I'm tipping you to that is that because this is a brand new entity, I think it would be wise for you to do some sort of public announcement soliciting people to run for those seats. So if you did a May 21st budget vote and you were ready to warn that at your April 8th meeting, it would give you a week basically to tip people to those seats being due. Your other option, if you wanted the May 14th budget vote, would be you'd really need to direct us to put out some kind of statement saying board seats are due on, board seat petitions are due on April 8th, and that would be the same night that you're warning the meeting. And so that makes me a little bit nervous, just because if we don't have a quorum that night, we would be off on when we were telling people to submit board petitions.
Morgan, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the beginning part about board seats. What board seats are up for voting, up for election?
So of your 8 seats, there are 5 seats that are going to be up. Aaron's seat is up in kind of the regular cycle of getting you all onto 3-year terms. And then the 2 Sheldon seats and the 2 Montgomery seats have been filled by board action, not by voter action. So they all need to be voted the next time your voters get together.
Okay, thank you. And could you quickly repeat the dates? April 8th would give us a May 14th vote, is that?
April 8th would give you I would recommend a May 21st vote for budget and board seats. That would give us time to warn your budget, and it would also give you a week after this meeting to solicit candidates for those board seats.
Thank you.
So the board petitions would be due April 15th.
Yes. So despite what is going on in the House and Senate right now, the only board that is allowed to warn a budget for NMV is this one, and by statute, it's going to cover 4 towns. We may be in a different place in 2 weeks right now, but if nothing has changed and you guys meet on April 8th, the way to continue with this kind of following on 2 tracks, as most of the other districts in the same situation are doing, would be for us to warn a 4-town budget that night. If something changes in the future, we might have to have a quick meeting to re-warn that if it's going to be a 3-town or a 2-town budget instead. But if we're going to take action unless anything changes, that night would be a 4-town budget.
So is your ask around the May 14th or May 21st for tonight?
No, my ask is I think we should be prepared on April 8th to come out of here with a warned budget of some form or another, knowing that we may need to have an emergency meeting before your May meeting if we need to adjust that.
You need to work on your
So are there any questions on that schedule?
Where's the April 8th meeting?
Yeah, I did have that question too.
April,
We're gonna say Berkshire.
Berkshire.
Okay.
And that's at 5:30.
And is it still at 5:30?
And we have a Montgomery meeting that night as well?
Yeah, that.
This is a great question.
I have it on my calendar for Montgomery,
Yeah.
4 hours at 7, so.
How about,
Keep an eye out on email
Yeah.
for the time.
we're gonna have to confirm, just because I know we can't get people here before 5:30. And it's unlikely that we're gonna get that done in a little over an hour. So we are either gonna be looking to adjust that meeting or adjust the Montgomery meeting. So Mary, we'll talk to you about that tomorrow as well.
Okay.
My students are on vacation.
And will there be anything happening on May 21st, like an informational meeting, or May 20th, if we go with that schedule, Morgan?
So we would need to have an official informational meeting at some point, and our recommendation to you would be to make sure, at least this first year, that we have an informational meeting in each of the towns that's voting. Did you get that, Lisa?
Thank you. I got most of it, that we would have to have a meeting in each town, or we should have a meeting in each town, but there's a mandatory one meeting, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So in terms of the budgets, I have not really changed anything from the versions that you might have seen in December, but we weren't allowed to discuss. We have some changes from the state in terms of the different levers that impact your tax rates. The best guess of the yield number is now that it's going to be back up, and it may potentially be higher than the number that we used in November. That's good news for tax rates across the state. Your equalized pupil numbers seem to be settling in. We've gotten, I think, 12 versions now of those numbers. They are generally down across our 4 towns. On average, for the 4 towns combined, it's about a 2.5% decrease. And a decrease in equalized pupils will drive up your tax rate. The CLA is different from town to town, so I'm not going to spend any time on that. And then the one lever that that you guys really get to change is how much of your ed spending is. So that's the amount of the budget less the amount of revenues that we're expecting. Big changes in terms of revenues that you have some control over. The carry forward from previous years seems to be positive but down on each of the towns, so that's going to help to push tax rates up. We have the issue where we do not think that Bakersfield is going to be getting their small schools grant, so that's a big hit to the tax rate. And other than that, it's special ed reimbursement. I will probably spend the morning of the 8th trying to come up with the best guess on that, but I don't think there's going to be huge changes from what you've seen in the past. In terms of expenses, we've got some buffers in terms of tuition kids in towns that we may be able to pull out in the last second when we combine the 4 budgets. The latest numbers that you've seen at your local level, for those of you who've seen budgets at your local level, include a higher assessment for the central office because at the last round of meetings I was assuming that Sheldon was going to get pulled back and not be part of that assessment. With Sheldon as part of that assessment, you're going to be sharing those costs over a greater number of kids, which helps. Other than that, transportation special ed expenses will remain largely the same. I am working with Laura McAllister from Franklin Northwest when there's time, because they budget a little bit differently, and so where it might make sense for us to just pull the Montgomery budget in as a whole and add that to the NMV budget. It's a little bit different for Sheldon because their assessments are handled differently. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to, at the last minute, look at Sheldon's budget of $5.5 million or whatever they're warning or looking at as a single district budget, and saying we're going to be able to save $100,000 or $200,000 here or there because it's basically duplicated expenses that we're already counting in our assessment. I've started to look at the current teacher master agreement and how that jives with the estimates that I had put out back in November, and I don't see any areas where we're going to have to increase salaries for teachers. There are a couple areas where we might be able to decrease it, but I don't think it's going to be more than a few $1,000s here or there. We can talk on the 8th about how confident we feel that your principals will be able to replace teachers who have announced at that time that they're moving on with teachers who cost less. We've got a handful of teachers relatively high in the salary schedule that we know are not coming back next year. I've budgeted them as if they're coming back, and depending on what the budget looks like and what tax rates look like, we may be able to shave some money at the last minute there as well. So I know that's a lot. I'm happy to answer any questions, and my plan is to get whatever sort of draft budget I'm going to have you look at out at least a few days earlier, so you can dig in and hopefully ask me questions offline, so that if I need to come up with an answer, I've got a day or two to do that before sitting down here again.
Morgan, this is Mary. The connection is not great. Some stretches of that I heard maybe every second or third word.
And that's kind of how I'm getting it too, Mary. So I think it's more the fact that Morgan's in a room talking to a microphone and we're trying to listen to it. Yeah. Yeah, so, well, in any event, Morgan, is it possible that you could do a really quick bulleted email with just those dates that you were throwing out as far as the timeline around board seats, petitions, meetings, et cetera, some sort of quick synopsis of that, just so I can then enter stuff on my calendar? It was really hard to follow it as you were going through it.
Sure, yeah, I'll send that out tonight.
That would be great, thank you.
Most of it. There's a couple pieces.
There's no volume on that thing, that could be cranked up.
Okay.
Turn.
So any other questions right now on the budget or the budget process? So I have 3 sets of motions that I'd love to leave this meeting with as part of the process of knocking things off of our to-do list as we get the district up and running. The first one is around municipal retirement. This is a brand new district, so this board gets to determine what sort of municipal retirement you offer to your employees. This would basically cover everyone who's not on teacher's retirement. Currently, Berkshire and Montgomery have people on 2 different plans, the defined benefit A and defined benefit B. Sheldon, I think, has everybody on defined benefit A. The difference between those 2 plans is that the B costs you and costs the employee a little bit more to contribute, but the benefit once they retire is greater. The way that this would work is once you pick a plan, every new employee to your district will be given that plan. Every employee that you inherit from one of the forming districts would be given the choice to stay on the plan that they are currently enrolled in or upgrade in the case of Sheldon or some of the Berkshire and Montgomery staff. In Bakersfield, where nobody gets retirement, the retirement board will come in and it will offer an election for those folks, so they can either start to join that plan or they can stay without retirement if they choose to do so. You can offer any one of the 5 plans that's out there. My recommendation is that you offer Group B, which across the SU is the one that that seems to have the most people in it.
This is an option for those who are not on a retirement plan?
This is an option for people who are currently not on a retirement plan. It would not be an option for new hires going forward. So the folks in Bakersfield who've never been given that option will be allowed to stay without retirement if they choose to. But when you make your first hire as NMV, they're going to be on whatever plan you guys choose.
But existing employees in Sheldon, Berkshire, and Montgomery who are on benefit A can stay there. They can choose A or B.
to stay on A. And if you're so inclined, there's about a 5-sentence motion that I need that's in your packet.
Is it in bold?
Mm-hmm.
It's in bold.
All right, next time I'm requesting you to send it to me, not a
Yeah.
PDF.
Same.
And I can send it to you in Word.
Anybody want to make the motion? Or have we decided benefit B? Have we decided benefit B? Any,
That part of it.
it seems fairly logical to me, but, yeah.
Makes sense.
Yep. Okay. Does anyone want to make Morgan's really long motion?
Do we have to read it?
Yeah. As
Slowly so I can type it. No, I'm sorry. I'll type it tonight when I get home. I'll just copy it over.
As noted. Leanne, did you say that you wanted?
Leanne, you want to read that?
Jeez. This
Yes.
part? Fine, I will make that motion. To participate in VMERS effective 7/1/2019 and to offer all eligible non-teacher employees the defined benefit plan Group B. Any existing employees as of 6/30/19 from Berkshire, Montgomery, and Sheldon that are currently participants of Group A will be given an election administered by VEMR's office to move to the higher Group B or remain in Group A. Any existing employees as of 6/30/19 from Bakersfield who do not presently participate in VEMR's at all will be given an election administered by VEMR's to join VEMR's Group B or not. Any existing employees as of 6/30/19 from Berkshire, Montgomery, and Sheldon currently participating in the defined contribution DC plan will continue to participate in the DC plan, but the DC plan will not be offered by the district. Any newly hired employees of the district as of 7/1/19 will be enrolled in VEMR's Group B automatically as a condition of employment.
Thank you, Leanne. All those in favor of Leanne's long motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next one is around P cards or purchase cards. So about 4 years ago, we piloted the use of purchase cards at the SU level, and they're basically credit cards, but they allow you more restrictions on where and how they're used. We've currently have 4 of them at the office, and we pilot them at the SU because we have the treasurer there. We are able to flip those payments around without incurring any late fees, which had always been the problem with credit cards at the district, because bills would have to come to us and then go to the treasurers, and they were never back in time. Given that the voters here named the SU treasurer to be the district treasurer, we're going to be able to do that same quick turnaround in our office once you guys are up and running. And so I wanted to get a motion on the books, if you're supportive, so that we could push these out to the buildings. My idea is that they would likely be able to replace a lot of the uses of petty cash that we have in the schools. And it would also make it so that principals don't have to call our office for expenses that need to go on a card, which they're doing now. So that's the drive behind that motion.
Questions, discussion? Would anyone like to make the motion? As noted by Morgan.
I can make that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
And then the last one is similar to the motions that you've been making at your local board levels for the last few years around the warrants. We've gotten away from finance committees, and we've been acting on payroll warrants, so the amounts that you're actually tied to salaries going out in advance of board signatures, because we do that anyway. And then for non-payroll expenses, to allow those to go out after any 2 board members have signed a warrant. And so those are 2 separate motions, and if you're in favor of continuing on with that process, we need to get both of those in the minutes.
Go ahead and make that motion.
You want to make the first one to authorize payment of non-payroll expenses?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. And then the second motion to authorize payment of payroll expenses in advance of warrants. Who would like to make that one?
I'll make that one.
Thank you, Kathy. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that's all I have, unless you've got questions.
I just have a quick comment that I'm figuring out that when Mary and I are missing words, it's when somebody is
speaking other than someone who's like right next to the phone. And then when they start speaking, we're missing like every 3 words.
We'll have to work on if there's a different technology option if we have to do this in the future.
Okay, thanks.
We just like to keep you guys on your toes.
Right.
Okay, I think we're at principal reports. Yes.
So can I just say before the principals start that, so we're trying to navigate the onboarding of the new district and new district for schools. So principals report is going to become a really important part of each of our meetings. I think for the next couple of months, probably the principals won't necessarily be sharing as much because there's going to be so much of like we had to talk about tonight. So I just wanted to kind of prep you guys for that, but I think we've already talked about moving forward, making sure that we're taking opportunities for this board to get to know each of those 4 individual schools. So in the future, like if we're at Bakersfield, we're gonna give Anissa the floor and say 20 minutes, 30 minutes, kick off the meeting, let's learn about something great that's going on in Bakersfield. And try to do it that way, and then have the other 3 maybe a quicker update on their off month. So just wanted to say that while the thought was in my mind.
That sounds like a really good plan, because as I was reading this, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be a really long board meeting going forward.
I'll go. All of mine is like, it's in there. You can read it. It's that's it. That's really all I have. I will just give 2 things that I don't know about posting positions still. I have those 2 that were hired after. I'd like to post for them.
So you can post.
Okay.
It's fine.
All right. And then, and I knew that was a question for you, but I figured while I was here. And then just to update the one thing, we said we were merging baseball teams, and I do have an update on that. It's Sheldon, Enosburg, and Bakersfield, Richford, Montgomery, and Berkshire, I believe is how they're going to split up now. And the rest.
Can you say that one more time, a little slower?
Sure.
A little bit.
The baseball teams,
Yes.
Sheldon, Bakersfield, Enosburg, at Enosburg,
Okay.
Berkshire, Richford, Montgomery, I believe at Richford.
Okay, gotcha.
And
I thought that was one giant team for a split second.
nope,
there.
2 teams,
Wow.
and Chris Brigham is going to schedule them into games, so that was good. The rest of my stuff is just nothingness. I mean, we talked about it at our other board meeting, really. It's there.
informational.
It's
It's not
informational.
nothing.
It's
It's- yeah.
informational.
Can I say one thing? And maybe I said this already at the last meeting, but that literacy night was such a great night. I mean, I always appreciate the teachers staying late and putting together these different events and so forth, but it was a really good event. You know, you had the state police in there, we had a lot of different things. There was some folks from Notch there that our friend Leanne probably sent our way. So it was just a really good event and a nice opportunity for families and community members to get to see all the different things that are going on in school. So I know that was new this year, and I just want to say it was a good job, and please pass that along to your staff.
Thank you, I will.
Okay.
That's it for me.
We
The rest of it you
almost
can read.
never get that short of a report out of Vanessa, so I'm just gonna cut her off and we're gonna move on.
Zip it on.
Lenny, you're next on the agenda.
Zippity doo dah. I'll make mine quick too. It is weird, like trying to navigate going from what I was talking to my board to talking to all you and recognizing that there's a lot of other context to have conversations around. So I'll fill you in on a couple things, but they're gonna not totally make sense to everybody. But our building and grounds concern, we were working on making sure our kitchen's fire suppression system was properly installed so that we could begin using the stove that we had invested in a few years previously. So that's been properly installed so we can start utilizing that. There's hopefully, as we get our farm to school programming going, there might be some more really unique ways of utilizing that stove. No real updates or changes around curriculums. I have a similar question about staffing, but I think I've asked Lynn like 15 times, when can I start posting for new positions or potential openings I know about? And she says, we have to continue to wait until everything has been understood. So I'm still very nervous about that. I know it's a conversation we're constantly having about when can I start getting teachers in our building, because the sooner we can do that, the more likely we can get a good candidate. So I'm still super nervous about that piece of it.
I hear you.
I know. I'll probably ask her again tomorrow anyway.
You probably will.
The one staffing issue we are working through right now is, it's a paraeducator position, but we call it the planning room coordinator. Our previous planning room coordinator took a job working elsewhere, so we've been without one for the last couple of weeks, which we are working 2 jobs, and so are a couple other people in the building. But we interviewed on Friday, and we're hoping to have finalized a candidate by the middle of this week, and then hopefully onboard them later on this week. So that's the one puzzle piece I got going on right now.
You'll call me about tomorrow, right?
Yes, hence why I haven't said I've hired them yet.
Good call.
Good job, Jill.
And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Lenny.
Yep.
Sandy?
So I have my report from my board meeting, which was March 11th, so some of it is a little bit past tense, but I was just reporting on that we had hired a new custodian at part-time and how that was going, which is going well. So my openings are a part-time cook and a middle school math teacher. And some of these events have been past tense, but our Shakespeare, we're really proud of the fact that it was our 25th year for our Shakespeare performances, which went off on the 14th and 15th of March without a hitch. It was really, really a couple of great nights. This week is busy with our student-led conferences, and we're pushing for 100% participation in attendance, so we'll see how that goes Wednesday, Thursday. And other than that, I submitted the 911 compliance grant that I spoke about with our board, and that's it for me.
So I just want to say your staff members have been really accessing the wellness opportunity for March and have been bowling at
yes,
the Dairy
they
Center.
have.
And because of your student-led conferences, they actually asked for an additional night.
And they got
You
it.
gave it to them,
And it's
yes.
on my calendar.
They're very
I'm going to try to
excited
join
about
them on
it.
that
Good.
night. Yep, bowling, April 4th. Be there or be square.
Christy, we've saved the best for last.
I won't read it all to you. Feel free to go through it. We just had our integrated field review. That went really well. It was a great day. The kids did a great job. That was probably the highlight. The kids who gave the tours and were in the interviews. That was a lot of fun.
But you skipped over the first one.
Oh,
which is
yes.
students,
Was that the chuckling when people were reading?
compelling arguments for 2 recesses
Yeah.
and a cotton candy machine, and I can get behind that myself, so.
Yeah, maple cotton
Yes,
candy.
yeah,
And one
100%.
of their reasons was that their teacher gets a little grumpy when she doesn't have a snack. So wouldn't it be great if they had some
Awesome.
cotton candy for her? And then one of the little girls said, yeah, and we need 2 recesses a day if we're having cotton candy. I was like, well, absolutely, nice job bundling. Yeah, and they find me in the building to read these to me. They're cute. So we had a great integrated field review visit. I'm going on one on Wednesday, so I'll have both sides of that. We have a middle school language arts March Madness Reading Challenge with a pretty cool bulletin board that's all coming together. We have a history club that's working with the Sheldon Historical Museum. There's a 5th and 6th grade contingent that's going out with Harold Smith from the Historical Society, and then there's Harold's coming into the middle school, 7 and 8. So we have 2 kind of groups doing that. What else? Volleyball has been a big hit. The kids love it.
We didn't have many. That they do practice here. We, of course, your kids off, but we have 1 Bakersfield student, but Fairfield and Bakersfield practice here. So hopefully next year we'll get more because this is where they practice.
They were really excited, and there's a number of students who have not played another sport yet at Sheldon, who are playing volleyball. So it's great. It's been really good. We're changing up our grade configurations next year. Sheldon has always had lots of multi-age opportunities because we have a class and a half at each grade level, and depending on what that, if it's like 33, that's more than, the 27. So we're really doing a lot of straight grade work at K1-2, and then again at 5. So those are going to be nice places to solidify some learning, and that really matches up nicely with Common Core and how that maps out. So that it'll be a little different next year. I'm excited. I think they are. What else? SBAC, as everyone knows, is coming up. We're going to start in 2 weeks.
Great, thank you. Okay. Board business. SU board meeting updates. Somebody asked that that be on the agenda every time, I think, right?
We said that. Yeah. So we haven't met with the SU board since December. Lisa, I think we added that at your request. So our next SU board meeting will be April 16th. And so we can give you, at your May meeting, we can give you an update from that SU board meeting.
And it was April what? I'm sorry, you cut out.
16th.
So what
Lynn, thank you. This is Mary. You keep cutting out.
So I'm sorry, it's April 16th.
Okay.
What is the
What time?
6:30?
I'm pausing because I feel like I always get it wrong. Let me look at my calendar.
I have 6:30.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with 6:30.
I have 6:30 on my calendar.
Perfect.
So what does or what will that configuration look like for the SU board? I guess maybe not now, but
That is such a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
It's a great question that until we know what our configuration is going to be for the operational schools for next year, I don't know that we can answer that. Statute says 3 members per district.
so assuming merger goes through in all of the situations, it would be 3 members from NMV, 3 members from Enosburg, Richford.
Correct.
Okay, so it'd be a 6-member
Yes.
SU board.
It's a giant board right now.
Yeah, we have 3 from each school.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's the district.
25 right now.
Yeah. And it's
Interesting.
a nightmare trying to pull a quorum, and I'm just a member, I'm not
So,
trying.
so if I understand that correctly, it means there would be possibly a school that's not represented necessarily on the SU board.
Right.
Well, you're going to be represented because your NMV board member will be there. They won't be representing individual towns. They'll be representing the newly defined district. So their role will be to look out for all 4 of those towns. But mathematically, there will be 1 board seat that wouldn't be covered by someone living in one of the communities. Or 2, it depends on who takes the, right.
Okay, elementary school choice? Somebody must
So-
have put that on
I am thinking, Morgan, that we do not need to do that tonight.
No, I think it's something that's gonna have to go through policy committee, but, this board should anticipate at their July or August meeting that they will get a request for elementary school choice. And I think you wanna have a policy in place.
And you shared like the Mount Mansfield one
Right.
when we kind of initially.
So what I can do the next time we meet, if we can work it in, is we need to get some idea of the direction that this board wants to go in terms of the elementary school choice policy that you want to put into place. So you're going to have, this would allow you, if you write this policy, to provide some greater flexibility for those kids that keep moving in between these 4 communities. So rather than them having to uproot, they could potentially stay in whichever school they started in. You would have to take a look at, we want to write language to ensure that people understood that we would not be offering transportation for people to go out to whichever school. Some of the things that when we reviewed the Mount Mansfield policy, they really attended to was sibling priority. So if someone was living in Bakersfield and going to Sheldon, that we would give priority to that sibling that's a few years younger so that the parents wouldn't have to be splitting. Class sizing, so that if people were wanting to ask to go to Berkshire, but there were already 27 kids in one class, we would establish a policy so that they wouldn't be able to go based on the class size and or building capacity. So it also really establishes clarity around waitlisting if there are people that want to shift to another school. So that's work that we have to do. We'll have the policy committee take a look at it. But we're definitely we'll bring something back to you for you to consider. But then we're hoping that you will tune into it for this next year. I know that we have already a question has come up about a family who lives in Sheldon but has bought property in Berkshire and would like to remain in Sheldon. So the school choice policy would allow for that because you're going to be one district. So there would be the potential for that family to just stay put where they are.
Quick question, Lynn, next policy meeting, has the April 3rd meeting been canceled?
Yes.
That's what I thought. So do we have a date for the next policy meeting?
It would be that first Wednesday in May.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
May 1st.
May 1st.
And then the negotiations committee, have we already dealt with that?
Yes.
Okay. Future agenda items, anybody have anything that they want to talk about next time?
So there is potential that we'll be having an emergency or a unscheduled meeting once we get more information around this, okay.
Well,
So we're scheduled to meet on April 8th, which is 2 weeks from tonight, right?
Mhm.
Okay. In Berkshire.
I think that we're just kind of in that place if the legislature acts and it's something that we feel we really can't wait until the next meeting in order to, if there's some action that this board needs to take, we would then call an emergency meeting because, you know, you could see just anticipating some of the work that has to be done between now and the end of the year. As soon as we know, if we can get started at that point, it would be best.
Yeah.
Lynn, this is Mary. I have a quick question.
Okay.
What is the process by which I can get sworn in to the board so that I'm a voting member of the NMB board?
So Mary, I've got the paperwork here, and next time that I see you, I can swear you in.
Okay. The other concern I have is this tight time slot between the NMBU meetings and when those fall on the same day that Montgomery has a meeting. I can't drive 45 minutes to Sheldon on the 8th for a meeting that starts at 5:30 when I need to be back in Montgomery by 7 o'clock.
So we're gonna move one or the other of those meetings. Morgan and I will give you a call to figure out whether or not we have some flexibility to adjust the Montgomery meeting. But we'll call you to try to work that out, and then we'll communicate with the rest of the board, because it isn't reasonable with what we're gonna be tasked with trying to accomplish in the next month to do it in that short amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I need to be part of that conversation if we're delving into merged budget issues, and that is not something I can accomplish in an hour before I would have to leave. 45 minutes, actually.
So I'm just curious, because I did hear Jean Marie comment that typically 5:30 is about when she can get here. Erin, is 5:30 kind of your limit too, or is it Leanne?
No, it depends if I have a meeting after school. So.
Could it be earlier if it were in Berkshire?
For me, it could.
On the 8th.
Probably not for
just for that one meeting? Like if we had it be if we warned it as a special meeting, what about others at the table?
I,
Probably not.
What date are you
I don't know that Sean
discussing
can
now,
get
April
there
8th?
either before.
Yeah, we're just talking about April 8th. You don't think
We
Sean
have a
could get
meeting
there?
April 8th at 5:30 in Berkshire, and Lynn's asking if we can move it earlier.
Thank you.
I know the last one he wasn't.
And that would be
able
fine
to get out early enough.
with me, I think.
Well, let us do a little surveying and we'll get back to you about that next meeting.
I have a feeling all of my meetings are gonna have to be phone meetings unless they're Monday mornings or midday.
Lisa,
Sorry.
do you have, it's okay, do you have a Google? Do you have a Google account?
What do you mean by a Google account? I have
Do you
a
have a
Gmail.
Gmail? Okay, so you and I can talk in between now and the next meeting. We might be able to do the Google Meet app, so it might work a little better than this. So we would have a visual and hopefully a better audio.
Oh, okay.
It's
So if
easy.
we can test it, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, I feel like we're at the finish line. Hallelujah. Thank you all. I feel like this is a lot of, we just are gonna spend the next several months slogging through all this, so I especially appreciate the patience and brevity of our principals.
Yes, thank you.
And a motion to adjourn, anyone? Signify by vacating your seat.
I can make that motion at 7:29.
7:29, perfect.